My son banned me from his wedding, and then, as if that humiliation wasn't enough, had the audacity to send me a bill for $80,000. $80,000. The mansion rental, the lobster and vintage wine catering, even the luxury honeymoon suite in Maui, all neatly itemized, as if I were his personal ATM, and at the very bottom, in his smug, deliberate handwriting, "After all the trouble you've caused, be grateful I'm letting you contribute. Send the check soon. Madison and I are counting on it." I stared at those words, my pulse hammering in my ears. For a split second, I couldn't even breathe. Then the shock tore open into something far hotter, a raw, searing outrage that burned away every ounce of disbelief. The nerve, the entitlement, the sheer gall to cut me out of his so-called happiest day and then demand I fund it like some second-class servant. If Ethan thought I'd meekly hand over a fortune for a wedding I wasn't welcome at, he was out of his mind. No, he was about to learn exactly how dangerous it is to spit in the face of the man who raised you. Outside, a bitter October wind rattled the aspen leaves, as if nature itself was seething with me. Inside, those invoices sat on my table like a slap across the face, daring me to respond. I pictured Ashford Manor's grand ballroom stripped bare, the imported flowers browning in their crates, the gossip spreading like wildfire through the champagne-sipping crowd. Ethan's obsession with appearances had always been his Achilles heel, and now I would use it against him. I folded the bill, slid it back into the envelope, and felt my hands steady. I wasn't just refusing to pay. I was going to make sure this wedding went down in flames before they ever got to say, "I do." If this story touched your heart, press 1 inch the comments. If you think it could have been handled differently, press 2. And I'd love to know, where in the world are you listening from? I've lived in the same small craftsman house in Boulder for nearly 30 years. It's nothing extravagant weathered wood siding that begs for fresh paint, a porch swing that groans when the wind cuts across the yard, and a view of the Rockies so perfect in the fall it looks unreal. After Laura passed in 2015, this place stopped being just a house. It became the last piece of steady ground I had left in a life that felt like it had been ripped apart. Laura was my anchor, my high school sweetheart, my partner in everything. She was the one who could bridge the gap between Ethan and me when tempers flared. We were a team, and when cancer stole her away, it took more than my wife. It took the glue that held my family together. I was 54 then, still working long hours as an engineer for a mid-sized firm in Denver. I took every overtime shift they offered, sold my old Chevy, and drained my retirement just to keep her treatments going. Ethan was 25, already strutting through the tech world in tailored suits, the kind who thought a handshake was a brand strategy. Then came the phone call. Not even a month after her funeral. His voice, cool and cutting. "If you'd done more, Dad, maybe she'd still be here." I gripped the phone until my knuckles went white. I had done everything I could, but in his mind it still wasn't enough. From there, our conversations shrank to clipped sentences. Holidays were awkward silences wrapped in forced smiles. Invitations stopped coming, and then Madison appeared, an influencer. All Instagram-perfect vacations, designer dresses, and glasses of wine tilted just so. She had a gift for making everyone feel inadequate, and Ethan soaked it up like gospel. The last time I saw them together before that bill arrived was Christmas. I'd driven 2 hours to Denver with a cooler full of Laura's homemade tamales, her recipe, her love wrapped in corn husks. Ethan opened the door, glanced at Madison, then back at me. "We're vegan now, Dad, and you should really text before you show up." They let me in, but it was like visiting strangers. Madison scrolled her phone without looking up. Ethan filled the air with empty talk about his latest project, never once asking about my health, never suggesting they'd come visit. I left before the coffee finished brewing. That's the son who later sent me a wedding bill big enough to buy another house. And here's the part that sticks in my throat. I raised him alone after Laura died. I taught him how to throw a baseball, stayed up all night when fever racked his body, drove him to every Little League game, and paid for his college so he could graduate debt-free. Now, I wasn't good enough for a seat at the wedding, but my bank account was apparently on the VIP list. I could have tossed that bill straight into the trash, let it rot there among the junk mail and grocery flyers. But I didn't, because as I sat in my kitchen, invoices spread out like a slap in the face. I felt something shift. For years, I'd been the one smoothing over his insults, swallowing the hurt, making peace, even when he didn't deserve it. Maybe it was the sharp bite of October air leaking through the window. Maybe it was the aspen branches clawing at the glass like they were telling me enough. Whatever it was, I knew this much. I wasn't just going to say no. I was going to make sure that Ethan Lawson and Madison Blake remembered the day they tried to use me, because it would become the day their perfect, picture-ready wedding went up in smoke. I held the envelope long after I'd read it, the edges growing soft under my grip. The invoices were printed on thick, pretentious stock, the kind that probably cost more per page than the coffee cooling in my mug. Even the font had that smug, moneyed air. I set it down and glanced toward the framed photo on the counter. Ethan at 8 years old, in a baseball jersey 2 sizes too big, grinning through the gap in his front teeth. I could still smell the wet grass of Jacobson Park that day, hear the rumble of that sudden summer thunderstorm. We'd sat in my old pickup, rain pounding the roof, and he'd crawled into my lap, whispering, "Don't worry, Dad, you're the strongest." That boy, the one who looked at me like I could hold up the whole world, was gone, replaced by a man who saw me as a stepping stone to his own image and a wallet to be drained when it suited him. The memory didn't bring nostalgia. It hardened into something sharper, a cold, deliberate anger that left no room for tears. I knew better than to confront him outright. Ethan fed off control. A phone call would only give him the chance to twist the story, make me the villain. No, this would have to be done sideways. If I was going to topple his perfect day, I'd dismantle it from the inside. I slid my laptop across the table, brushed off the thin layer of dust, and powered it up. The screen's cold blue glow washed over the kitchen, matching my mood perfectly. First stop, Madison's Instagram. Of course she hadn't set it to private. Her entire existence revolved around broadcasting her life like a commercial. I scrolled past photo after photo. Champagne flutes, boutique shopping bags, brunch tables staged like magazine covers. Then I saw it. "Can't wait for our dream wedding at Ashford Manor. Number blessed, number luxury life," tagged with the venue's account. I clicked through. The website bled excess aerial drone shots of manicured gardens, crystal chandeliers, sprawling stone fireplaces. $50,000 for the venue alone. Catering by Elite Events. Promising farm-to-table menus for up to 200 guests. Florist. White Peony Designs, minimum order 20 grand, imported blooms only. Even the photographer was top shelf. I remembered the name from the wedding magazines Laura used to collect. Every detail screamed perfection. And all of it, every last petal, every overpriced hors d'oeuvre hinged on one thing: payment. If I cut the money, I cut the wedding's throat. But to pull that off, I'd need someone already close to the operation. Someone who wouldn't see me coming. That's when I remembered the name, Cole Whitman. Madison had tagged him in a post. "Our incredible planner at Cole Whitman Events, making dreams come true." A quick search brought up his website. There he was in the first image, mid-42nd, tailored suit, a smile that could talk you into maxing out your credit card. Before I could talk myself out of it, I dialed the number. "Cole Whitman Events, this is Cole," came the smooth, polished greeting. "Mr. Whitman," I said, voice steady as steel. "This is Rick Lawson. I'm Ethan Lawson's father, the one footing the bill for his wedding." A polite beat of surprise. "Ah, yes, Mr. Lawson, wonderful to—" "I'd like to go over a few details in person," I cut in. "There are things I want clarified before a single payment leaves my account." He didn't hesitate. We set the meeting for 10 the next morning, downtown Denver. After I hung up, I stared at the invoice again, hearing Ethan's voice in my head, smug, condescending, certain I'd fold. Not this time. Before bed, I dug through the back of my desk drawer until I found it a small silver pocket watch, worn smooth with years of use. My father had given it to me the day I graduated high school. I'd carried it every day I worked, a reminder that time, like respect, had to be earned. I turned it over in my hand. The weight grounded me. Tomorrow, the countdown would begin. Morning came pale over the Rockies. The sky streaked gold and gray. I dressed in clean slacks and a dark sweater, understated but businesslike. The drive to Denver took under an hour. Aspen trees along the highway shed their last yellow leaves like they knew the season was turning. Cole's office was on the 10th floor of a glass tower downtown. Inside, swatches of fabric and framed photos of beaming couples lined the walls. "Mr. Lawson," he greeted warmly. Your son and his fiancée have impeccable taste. Booking Ashford Manor this late in the season? Very lucky. I leaned in just enough for him to see I wasn't here to smile. Did Ethan also tell you I'm not invited? His smile froze. No, he didn't mention that. He sent me the bill anyway. Said I should be grateful for the chance to contribute. Cole shifted uncomfortably. That's awkward. Here's the deal, I said, my voice low but firm. Until I speak to my son directly, there will be no payment. If that means the vendors walk, so be it. And if Ethan has a problem with that, remind him how fast a wedding can fall apart when the money dries up. Cole's pen paused over his notepad. He gave a slow nod. I'll make the call. I stood, shook his hand, and stepped out into the crisp Denver air. The first ripple had just gone out, and I was only getting started. By the time I pulled into my driveway in Boulder, the wind had kicked up hard, scattering gold leaves across the porch, like nature was throwing confetti for the fight I was about to start. I peeled off my sweater, hung it on the chair, and poured myself a coffee. The conversation with Cole looped in my mind like a recording I couldn't shut off. He hadn't defended Ethan, hadn't even tried to sugarcoat it. That silence told me everything the cracks in their picture-perfect plan were already there. I just had to split them wide open. I scrolled through my contacts until I found a name I hadn't tapped in years. Jason Miller, Ethan's best friend from middle school through college. I used to call him my second son. After his parents split, he spent weekends at our house, Laura fussing over him with extra pancakes and that maternal warmth that could make a kid believe the world was safe. But all that changed the day Ethan, in his first shiny tech job, stole one of Jason's project ideas and passed it off as his own. Jason called him out. Ethan dropped him like garbage. I hit call before I could think twice. Rick Lawson? Man, it's been a long time. Jason's voice came through, older but still carrying that easy warmth. Yeah, too long, I said. Then I got right to it. You're doing PI work now. Still do photography? That's right. Why? My son's getting married. Uninvited me. Then sent me an $80,000 bill to pay for it. I'm not signing that check, but I'm going to make sure the wedding collapses. I need another set of eyes. There was a sharp intake of breath, then a low whistle. That sounds exactly like Ethan. Count me in. Where do we start? Come by tonight. Bring every piece of gear you've got. Of? That evening, Jason showed up at my door with a duffel bag heavy enough to sink a boat cameras, long lenses, voice recorders, even a couple of covert rigs that looked like they'd come out of a spy kit. We sat at my kitchen table, steam curling up from mugs of coffee while the temperature outside slipped toward winter. I slid the invoice between us. Every vendor here depends on final payment. If they start thinking the money isn't coming, they'll pull out. I want you to document everything: late deliveries, frustrated staff, Madison losing her temper. Photos, video, audio. We keep receipts for every single crack. Jason's mouth twisted into a grin I hadn't seen since he was 18. You're building leverage. Exactly. The goal isn't just to stop the wedding, it's to make them feel it. Humiliation burns longer than an empty bank account. The next week, we moved like ghosts. Jason camped outside Ashford Manor at sunrise, snapping long-lens shots of florists unloading crates, caterers carting and tasting trays, planners arguing in the parking lot. I spent hours combing vendor contracts for cancellation clauses and payment deadlines like a man mapping weak spots in a fortress wall. Then the voicemail started. First, Ethan, that fake calm tone he used when he was trying to reel me in. Dad, there's been a misunderstanding. Cole said you wanted to talk. Let's sort this out. Then Madison, sharp enough to cut glass. You can't do this, Rick. It's petty. Vendors are threatening to cancel. This is our life you're messing with. The third came after midnight. Ethan's voice cracked under the weight of panic. Dad, I'm serious. The estate's holding the date, but they want the balance now. Fix this. I saved every single one. By Friday, Jason's folder was a gold mine, half-unloaded trucks. Staff checking clipboards with tight jaws. Ashford's ballroom sitting half-decorated under cold, dusty chandeliers. The cracks weren't just widening anymore. They were splintering, and I was just starting to swing the hammer. By Friday evening, Jason was back at my door, a tablet tucked under his arm, and a grin that told me he'd brought ammunition. You're going to love this, he said, dropping the tablet onto my table. A few taps later, grainy footage filled the screenshot from across Ashford Manor's long, manicured driveway. A white florist van idled in the rain. Two women in rain jackets carried half-filled crates back inside. faces tight. The driver shook his head toward the mansion. One of the women mouthed clearly, "No payment." Jason leaned back in his chair. "This was this morning. Coal's already catching heat. The vendors aren't walking yet, but they're rattled." Of that same cold satisfaction from the day the bill arrived pulsed through me. "Good," I said. "Let's push harder." We mapped it out. Jason would work the smaller vendors, the ones Madison probably handpicked without Ethan's involvement, and drop quiet hints about payment confusion, just enough to seed doubt. Meanwhile, I'd keep Cole dangling, refusing to release a cent until Ethan faced me in person. The next morning I called Cole. "I've been going over the invoices again," I told him. "And some of these numbers don't add up. I need fresh breakdowns before anything moves forward." He sighed, long and heavy. "Rick, deadlines are here. I understand the family tension. But the vendors. If Ethan wants the money," I cut in, "he knows where to find me." That same afternoon, Jason sent me a photo. The caterer's truck parked downtown, the driver leaning against the hood, arms crossed, face like stone. Caption, "Holding pattern, won't confirm the menu without payment." By Monday, Ethan's voicemail tone had curdled. First, "Dad, this isn't funny." Madison's freaking out, Cole's panicking. "Just send the money and we'll deal with our issues later." Then hours later, hotter. "You're sabotaging our wedding. This is low, even for you." I saved them both, labeling them Desperation Number 1 and Number 2. That night, Jason and I regrouped at my place. While chili reheated on the stove, he laid out the final phase. Direct observation on the big day. "I'll blend in outside Ashford," he said, scrolling through aerial shots of the property. "Big lens, low profile. Every vendor pulling out, every confused guest, you'll have proof of the implosion." "Perfect," I said. But the universe threw in a bonus. Midweek, my neighbor Mrs. Carter called. "Ran into one of Madison's bridesmaids," she said. "She's moaning about budget issues and hinted Ethan's dad is holding things up. Thought you'd want to know." "Oh, I want to know," I said, smiling into the phone. And that's when I knew the story was seeping into their circle. For people obsessed with appearances, rumors are poison slow, silent, and fatal. By Thursday, Cole's voice had lost all polish. "Rick, we're at a breaking point. If payments aren't made by tomorrow, the florist's gone. The caterer's already sniffing around for another booking." I let the silence stretch until it was uncomfortable. "Then I guess tomorrow will be interesting." That night, Jason's final update hit my inbox. Ashford's ballroom, half its chairs missing, bare tables under weak yellow light. No linens, no decor, no hope. "They're teetering, Rick," his message read. "One more nudge, and the whole thing goes over." I stared at the image, the quiet of my house pressing in. For years, Ethan controlled the terms when we spoke, how we spoke, and whether I was worthy of a place in his life. Not anymore. This time, I wasn't the one being played. This time, I was the one pulling the strings. By Friday morning, my phone was a war zone. Ethan's number, Madison's number, unknown numbers, probably vendors, maybe even reporters from some wedding blog Madison had been feeding for months. I didn't answer a single one. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table, nursing my second coffee, scrolling through the latest shots Jason had sent. The florist's van gone. The grand driveway at Ashford Manor empty except for puddles reflecting a sullen November sky. A catering crew hauling trays back into their truck, hoods pulled low against the drizzle. One worker jabbed a finger towards someone out of frame, the kind of gesture that says, "We're done here." Jason's caption read, "Told them about the uncertain payment situation." They didn't take it well. The next photos made me stop mid-sip. The ballroom half set, looking more like an abandoned conference room than a luxury wedding venue. A single row of chairs shoved against the wall. Flower arrangements still boxed. No linens, no glassware. Just emptiness and a creeping sense of failure. Then came the audio clip. Ethan's voice, brittle with frustration. "Look, standards matter more than bonds, Madison. My father's made it clear he's not part of this. He's irrelevant." I played it twice, letting the words sink in. Standards matter more than bonds. It wasn't just arrogance. It was the pure, unfiltered truth about why I was dismantling this circus, the proof that family meant nothing to him unless it served his image. By noon, Jason texted again. "Ran into Cole in the parking lot. He's stressed. Says half the vendors want deposits today or they're gone." 2 hours later, Madison's voice landed in my voicemail, high, tight, on the edge of cracking. Rick, I don't know what game you're playing, but you're ruining everything. The flowers, the food, it's all falling apart. The guests are asking questions. Please, just pay. For Ethan. Not for us, not for family. For Ethan. For his public facade. The cracks weren't hidden anymore. They were spiderwebbing across the surface for everyone to see. At 3, Mrs. Carter from 2 doors down knocked, cheeks pink from the cold. Rick, she said, lowering her voice like she was delivering state secrets. The coffee shop's buzzing. People are saying the Lawson wedding might be canceled. Something about financial trouble. I thanked her, keeping my smile small. Madison's perfect Instagram fairy tale was rotting from the inside, and now the smell was reaching the crowd. As the sun dropped behind the Rockies, Jason's final update of the day came through. Cole told Ethan, no money, no wedding. He's furious. Madison's crying in the hall. Want me to keep eyes on them tomorrow? Yes, I typed back. From the moment the first guest arrives, I set the phone beside my father's pocket watch on the counter. The steady ticking was almost soothing, the complete opposite of the chaos unraveling at Ashford Manor. Tomorrow, Ethan and Madison would learn the brutal truth. When you build your life on nothing but appearances, all it takes is one pull on the wrong thread for the whole thing to collapse. And I'd be there not to toast the bride and groom, but to watch their empire of glass shatter. The morning of the 15th of November broke gray and unforgiving, the kind of mountain rain that doesn't fall in drops but in walls hammering the streets, swallowing sound. I sat at my kitchen table in Boulder, coffee steaming in my hands, watching the weather app confirm what the pounding on my roof already told me. Heavy rain, all day. Jason's first text came at 7:12 a.m. At Ashford. Vendors trickling in but half already leaving. Flowers repacked. Caterer truck idling. Guests due at noon. By 9:30, the evidence started flooding in. A florist's assistant hurling a soaked bouquet into the back of a van. Chairs stacked under a sagging tent. The white fabric stained with mud. Guests arriving early. Umbrellas bending in the wind. Faces pinched like they'd stepped into the wrong movie. Then came the voice memo, muffled under the roar of rain. But clear enough. Where's the setup? Did something happen? By noon, Ethan's calls started. I let each one go to voicemail. The first was still all swagger. Dad, send the money. We can fix this before people notice. The second dripped desperation. Please. The estate manager's threatening to shut it down. Guests are laughing, calling it amateur hour. Just wire it, Dad. For me. The third was pure venom. You'll regret this. You're humiliating us. I was halfway through that one when the pounding on my front door rattled the frame. Ethan and Madison stood on my porch, soaked through. His suit jacket clung to his shoulders, hair plastered to his forehead. Her coat was pulled tight, but the sodden hem of her white gown trailed in the rainwater, pooling at her feet. Dad, let us in, Ethan said, stepping forward. I didn't move. What do you want? The wedding's ruined, he said flatly. Vendors bailed. Guests scattered. But we can salvage the reception if you send the money now. Madison's voice cracked. Please, Rick. The honeymoon's already paid for, we just need to cover today. I stepped aside. The smell of wet wool and panic followed them in. Ethan raked a hand through his dripping hair. Look, banning you, that was a mistake. Madison thought it was best. Her head snapped toward him. Don't you dare put this on me. But now we need you, he pushed on. Help us out, Dad, for old times. That phrase hit like a cold knife. Old times. The night after Laura's funeral, when he told me I hadn't done enough. The Christmas where I wasn't welcome, unless I texted first. The $80,000 bill addressed to me like I was nothing but an open checkbook. Old times like when you blamed me for your mother's death? I asked quietly. Ethan's eyes darted to the floor. I was angry. I didn't mean it. Would you still value me if I had nothing? Madison looked between us, her lips parting, but no words came out. Ethan finally said it. Of course you're family, but success means standards. You know that. There it was. The truth stripped bare the same rot I'd heard in Jason's recording. Standards over bonds. I shook my head. Number, this is the consequence of your choices. You're destroying us, he snapped. People are already talking. Good, I said. Maybe they'll finally see you for who you are. For a beat, the only sound was the rain drilling the roof. Madison clutched Ethan's arm, whispering something too low to catch. Then, in a voice stripped raw, Ethan said, "I regret it. All of it." I opened the door. The wind shoved cold into the hallway. "Then learn from it." They stepped back into the storm. I closed the door and let the sound of their footsteps fade into the downpour. The house settled into silence, broken only by the steady, patient ticking of my father's pocket watch on the counter. Unbothered, unyielding. The days that followed were quieter, but the echoes of that stormy afternoon lingered in the neighborhood. News of the wedding's collapse spread quickly, whispers at the coffee shop, murmurs in local groups. Ethan's carefully crafted image shattered like fragile glass. Vendors confirmed cancellations. The Ashford Manor manager called to say deposits were partially refunded, but the damage was done. Guests who had RSVP'd politely declined afterward. Madison's social media slowed to a trickle, her usual posts replaced by vague apologies and cryptic quotes about resilience. For me, the silence was a relief. One evening, I sat by the fireplace, watching the thick wedding bill burn softly in the hearth. As the paper curled to ash, a weight lifted a burden I hadn't realized I'd been carrying. It wasn't just about money. It was about respect, about being seen not as a bank account or an embarrassment, but as a man who raised a son through hardship, who loved his family fiercely despite the cracks. Jason stopped by several times with updates and to check in. "You did good," he said once, handing me photos of empty tents and scattered chairs. I smiled and nodded. For the first time in years, I felt I'd reclaimed a part of myself. Weeks later, an email arrived from Mrs. Carter, the neighbor who'd kept me informed. "Your stand reminded me what truly matters. Family, dignity, and real ties over appearances. Let's have coffee soon." I looked out the window. The rain had cleared. Sunlight broke through the clouds, casting golden streaks across the mountains. The lesson was clear. Success built on greed and false images can crumble overnight. But dignity, true dignity, endures. Sometimes, to reclaim it, you have to be willing to burn the old, broken foundations. As for Ethan and Madison, I haven't heard from them since that day on the porch. Maybe they're rebuilding, maybe they're learning. As for me, I'm just beginning to find peace.